Have you ever looked at your own financial life and wondered whether you are doing better or worse than everyone else? It is a simple question, but it is a dangerous one, because most people are comparing themselves to the wrong picture. They look at social media, they see vacations, new cars, renovated kitchens, restaurants, watches, trucks, houses, and people who seem calm about money. They assume that everyone else has figured something out that they have not figured out yet. But appearances are a very poor financial statement. A vacation photo does not tell you whether there is credit card debt behind it. A new car does not tell you whether the owner has an emergency fund. A nice house does not tell you whether retirement is funded. A good credit score does not tell you whether the person is building real wealth. So if you want to understand where you stand, you cannot look at appearances. You have to look at the numbers. And when you look at the numbers, the picture becomes much clearer and much more uncomfortable. The average person is not doing nearly as well as many people think. That does not mean every individual is failing. It does not mean there is no hope. It does not mean you should feel shame if you are behind. Shame is not useful. Shame usually creates hiding, and hiding makes financial problems worse. What it means is that the average path is not a safe path. If you simply do what most people do, earn what most people earn, save what most people save, carry the debt most people carry, and retire with what most people retire with, the outcome is likely to be fragile. That is the main point. Average is not a goal. Average is a warning. Most people do not know what normal really looks like when it comes to money. They may think normal means stable. They may think normal means responsible. They may think if they are roughly like their neighbors, coworkers, or friends, they are probably fine. But normal and safe are not the same thing. A society can normalize financial fragility. It can normalize credit card debt. It can normalize car payments. It can normalize low retirement savings. It can normalize spending almost everything you earn. It can normalize relying on Social Security, even when the math is weak. When enough people do something dangerous, it stops feeling dangerous. It begins to feel ordinary. That is why statistics matter. They pull back the curtain. They show you the real baseline. They tell you whether you are building a structure or drifting with the crowd. Let us start with income. The median weekly earnings for a full-time worker are a little over $1,000. That works out to roughly $52,000 a year before taxes. That number matters because it is not household income, it is individual income. It is the middle of the pack, meaning half of full-time workers earn more and half earn less. If you are earning around $26 an hour, you are close to the typical full-time worker. At first, $52,000 may sound like a reasonable number, but gross income is not the same as spendable income. After federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and other deductions, that income can shrink quickly. Depending on where a person lives, the take-home amount may be closer to $35,000 or $40,000. That is the first reality. Most people are not working with as much money as their gross salary suggests. And if you combine that with the cost of housing, transportation, food, insurance, debt, and healthcare, the margin becomes very thin. This is the first systems principle. Financial stress is often not caused by one terrible decision. It is caused by a system where income, expenses, debt, and savings leave almost no room for error when there is no margin. Every surprise becomes a crisis. Now look at retirement savings. The median amount Americans have saved for retirement is around $65,000 among those who have retirement savings. That number alone should make people pause, but the more important fact is that about 1 in 4 Americans have no retirement account at all. Zero number 401k, no IRA, no meaningful retirement savings. That means many people are planning, consciously or unconsciously, to rely almost entirely on Social Security, family, work, or luck. That is not a plan. It is an exposure. And when you break retirement savings down by age, the picture becomes more serious. People under the 25th of May have less than $2,000 saved. That is understandable because many are just beginning. But the habit built early matters enormously because time is the greatest asset young people have. The 25 to 34 age group has a median balance around $14,000. That may feel like progress, but it is still very small compared with the amount needed for a secure retirement. By age 65 and older, the median retirement balance rises to around $88,000. That sounds like real money until you convert it into income. Using a simple 4% withdrawal framework, $88,000 produces about $3,500 per year. That is less than $300 per month. Think about that carefully. After a lifetime of work, the median older person with retirement savings may have enough to draw only around $300 a month from those accounts under a conventional withdrawal rule that does not cover groceries, utilities, medical costs, insurance, transportation, and the ordinary expenses of life. So when people say they will retire somehow, I ask what the word somehow is hiding. Sometimes it hides Social Security, sometimes it hides children helping, sometimes it hides part-time work, sometimes it hides selling a home, sometimes it hides reduced living standards, sometimes it hides denial. This is why the average retirement number should not be a comfort. It should be a wake-up call. Now consider Social Security. The average monthly benefit is around $1,550 or about $18,600 per year. For some people, that may cover a portion of basic expenses. For others, it will not come close. And that is the average. If a person had low earnings, years out of the workforce, inconsistent work history, or early claiming decisions, the benefit can be lower. This creates a dangerous dependency. If a retiree has little savings and depends mainly on Social Security, then the quality of retirement depends heavily on a government benefit that may not be enough to maintain a dignified standard of living. Again, I am not saying Social Security has no value. It has enormous value for many people, but it should not be the entire plan if there is any ability to build assets earlier. A retirement system built only on Social Security and a small savings balance is not resilient. It is very sensitive to inflation, healthcare costs, rent, taxes, family needs, and longevity. Longevity itself becomes a risk when assets are too small. That is a strange idea, but it is true. Living longer is good. Running out of money while living longer is not. Now let us examine spending. The average American household spends around $5,577 per month, or roughly $67,000 per year. That is a very important number because it shows why many households feel stuck even when they have decent income. If a household spends $67,000 a year after taxes, then it needs to bring home at least that much just to break even. To save meaningfully, invest, and build wealth, it must earn substantially more or spend substantially less. The biggest expense is housing, around $1,885 per month on average. That includes rent or mortgage, property taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and related housing costs. In many major cities, that number looks low. In other places, it may feel high, but either way, housing is usually the foundation of the household budget. Then comes food, around $691 per month, groceries, dining out. And the ordinary cost of feeding a household. Food inflation can make this number feel even more painful because food is not discretionary in the way many expenses are. You can cut restaurants, but you cannot stop eating. Transportation is another major expense, around $913 per month. That includes car payments, insurance, gas, maintenance, and public transportation for many households. Transportation is the silent wealth destroyer. It is easy to normalize because cars feel necessary, but the difference between a reasonable transportation system and an oversized transportation system can determine whether a family builds wealth or lives under pressure. When you add housing and transportation together, the average household is already spending nearly $2,800 per month before food, healthcare, debt payments, insurance, childcare, taxes, and everything else. This is why many people feel squeezed. It is not imaginary. Their fixed costs have become too large relative to their income, and when fixed costs are high, flexibility is low. Low flexibility creates stress. Stress creates short-term decisions. Short-term decisions create long-term damage. That is how the cycle works. Now look at credit scores. The average FICO score in America is around 715, which is considered good. That may sound encouraging. It means many people pay bills on time and manage some aspects of credit reasonably well. But a credit score is not the same as wealth. This is an important distinction. A high credit score tells lenders that you are likely to repay debt. It does not tell you whether you own assets. It does not tell you whether you have an emergency fund. It does not tell you whether retirement is funded. It does not tell you whether your spending is sustainable. You can have a good credit score and still be financially fragile. You can be excellent at borrowing and weak at building. That is not a contradiction. It is a feature of the system. The credit system rewards repayment behavior. Wealth building requires ownership, saving, investment, and restraint. Those are different skills. Maintaining good credit is useful. It can lower borrowing costs. It can help with mortgages, car loans, insurance, rental applications, and other financial interactions. But do not confuse creditworthiness with financial independence. A lender may trust you because you pay them reliably. That does not mean you are free. Now let us talk about credit card debt. The average household carries over $9,000 in credit card debt. This is where the numbers become very serious. Credit card debt is usually not attached to an appreciating asset. It is not a mortgage on a home. It is not a productive business loan. It is often the residue of past consumption, emergencies, lifestyle inflation, or income shortfalls, and the interest rates can be brutal: 15%, 20%, 25%, sometimes more. If you owe $9,000 at 20% interest, you are paying around $1,800 a year just in interest. That money does not buy you food, safety, freedom, investments, education, or retirement. It buys the right to keep carrying the debt. Credit card companies understand this machine very well. They want minimum payments, they want balances to revolve, they want people to feel that the payment is manageable while the balance remains alive for years. That is why credit card debt is so dangerous. It is a compounding engine working against you. A person investing in the stock market while carrying high-interest credit card debt is often doing the order wrong. There is no point trying to earn 7% while paying 20% unless there is some unusual situation. Paying off that high-interest debt is like earning a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate avoided. The math is not complicated, the behavior is difficult. Credit card debt often reflects deeper habits: spending without planning, emergencies without reserves, lifestyle without margin, emotional purchases, a budget that cannot absorb reality. So the solution is not only to pay it off, the solution is to stop recreating it. If you pay off $9,000 of credit card debt and then build the same balance again, nothing has changed structurally. The habit must change. Now let us move to net worth. Net worth is one of the cleanest measures of financial health because it is simple. What you own minus what you owe, assets minus liabilities. The median net worth for American households is around $122,000. But the age breakdown is what really matters. Under 35, median net worth is less than $14,000 from 35 to 44. It rises to around $91,000 from 45 to 54, around $168,000 from 55 to 64, around $212,000 from 65 to 74, around $266,000. These numbers can be interpreted in two ways. On one hand, they show that many people do accumulate more over time. On the other hand, they show that the median outcome after decades of work is still not as secure as many people imagine. A $266,000 net worth near retirement may include home equity. If much of that wealth is trapped in a house, it may not produce income unless the person sells, downsizes, borrows against it, or rents part of it. Net worth is useful, but liquidity and income matter too. A person can have positive net worth and still lack cash flow. A person can have home equity and still struggle with groceries. That is why financial strength has several dimensions: net worth, liquidity, debt level, income, expenses, asset quality, retirement readiness. You need to look at the whole system. The average net worth numbers are achievable for many people with consistent saving and investing, but they are not automatic. They require spending less than you earn and putting the difference into assets over time. The problem is that most people do not save enough. The average personal savings rate is around 6% of after-tax income. 6%, that is better than nothing. But it is not enough for most serious wealth. Building goals. If you save 6% and also need to fund emergencies, car replacements, home repairs, vacations, children, short-term goals, and retirement, there may not be much left for long-term compounding. Most financial guidance suggests saving at least 10 to 15% specifically for retirement. And more if you start late, want to retire early, or have higher lifestyle goals. This is where the average path fails. People want financial security, but the behavior does not match the goal. They want retirement but save too little. They want peace but carry high-interest debt. They want flexibility but build fixed costs too high. They want to feel wealthy but finance depreciating assets. They want independence but spend almost everything they earn. Again, this is not about judgment, it is about cause and effect. If the inputs are fragile, the outputs will be fragile. A savings rate of 6% may feel normal because many people are doing it, but normal is not the same as sufficient. Now consider retirement age. The average retirement age in America is around 61. That may sound positive at first. Retiring at 61 sounds early enough to still enjoy life, but the problem is that full Social Security benefits may not be available until later, often around age 67 depending on birth year and claiming decisions. That creates a gap of several years. If someone retires at 61 with limited savings, how are those years funded? Maybe they use savings, maybe they claim Social Security early at a reduced benefit, maybe they work part-time, maybe they rely on a spouse, maybe they downsize, maybe they reduce spending dramatically, maybe they did not choose to retire, they were forced out by health, layoffs, age discrimination, caregiving responsibilities, or exhaustion. This is important. Average retirement age does not necessarily mean average retirement readiness. Many people retire earlier than planned because life pushes them out of the workforce. That means retirement planning should not assume you can work until 70. Just because the spreadsheet looks better that way. You may want to, you may not be able to. Health changes, industries change, employers change, family obligations change, the labor market changes. So a resilient plan must be built with the possibility that work ends earlier than expected. At the same time, longevity means retirement can last a long time. Someone reaching 6th the 5th of May live another 19 to 21 years on average. If retirement begins at 61, that could mean 25 years or more to fund. 25 years is a long time. It is long enough for inflation to do damage, long enough for healthcare costs to rise, long enough for markets to go through multiple cycles, long enough for housing needs to change, long enough for family needs to appear. So retirement is not simply the day work ends. It is a long financial season that must be funded. When the average older person has only around $88,000 in retirement savings, the gap between retirement desire and retirement resources becomes obvious. This is why the numbers are not merely interesting. They are a warning system. They tell you that the average person is not building a strong enough bridge between working life and retirement life. Now, what should you do with these statistics? The wrong response is to compare yourself emotionally. If you are ahead of the average, do not become arrogant. If you are behind the average, do not become ashamed. The right response is to use the averages as a baseline and decide whether you want to be normal, because normal may not be good enough. If the average person saves 6%, perhaps you need to save 15 or 20%. If the average household carries $9,000 in credit card debt, your goal should be zero revolving credit card debt. If the average older person has $88,000 in retirement savings, your goal should be much more. If the average household spends $5,577 per month, your goal may be to design a life with more margin. If the average person retires with too little, your goal should be to build assets earlier and let compounding work longer. Doing better than average does not require genius. It requires order. First, stop the bleeding. High-interest credit card debt is bleeding. Oversized car payments are bleeding. Uncontrolled lifestyle spending is bleeding. Subscriptions, convenience purchases, and impulse spending may not be the entire problem, but they are leaks. A person cannot build wealth effectively while the bucket is full of holes. Second, build an emergency fund. Without emergency savings, every unexpected expense becomes debt. A car repair, medical bill, job interruption, or home repair can push a person backward if there is no buffer. An emergency fund is not glamorous, but it creates stability. Third, increase the savings rate. 6% is the average. The goal is not to be average. The goal is to create separation. If you can move from 6% to 10%, then 15%, then more. The trajectory changes. Small changes in savings rate compound over decades. Fourth, invest consistently in productive assets. Cash alone is not enough. Savings protect you from short-term shocks. Investments help build long-term wealth. Low-cost diversified investments, retirement accounts, and assets that grow over time can help convert income into capital. Fifth, control fixed costs. Housing and transportation dominate the budget. If those two categories consume too much income, everything else becomes difficult. People focus on small purchases, but the big structural costs determine the system. A cheaper coffee will not save a household whose car payment and rent are too high. Sixth, measure net worth annually. Do not only track income. Income can be high and wealth can be low. Net worth tells you whether your financial structure is improving. If you earn more but net worth does not rise, something is leaking. Seventh, think in terms of purchasing power and future income. Retirement savings are not just numbers. They must become future cash flow. A $65,000 or $88,000 balance sounds meaningful until you translate it into monthly income. Always translate capital into income and lifestyle sustainability. That makes the truth visible. Now, there is one encouraging piece in all of this. The bar is lower than many people think because the average behavior is weak. You do not need to become extraordinary to separate yourself. You need to become consistent. If you avoid credit card debt, you are ahead of many people. If you save more than 6%, you are ahead of many people. If you invest regularly, you are ahead of many people. If you keep transportation costs controlled, you are ahead of many people. If you build an emergency fund, you are ahead of many people. If you understand what you own and why, you are ahead of many people. If you start in your 20s or 30s, you have an enormous time advantage. If you start later, you may need to save more aggressively, work longer, reduce expenses, or be more deliberate. But improvement is still possible. The point is not perfection, the point is direction. Most people drift if you steer. You create an advantage. That is the main lesson of these statistics. The average person is not broke because they are foolish. The average person is often trapped in a system of normal decisions that produce fragile outcomes. A normal income, normal spending, normal car payments, normal credit card debt, normal retirement contributions, normal savings rate, normal financial avoidance, normal late start, normal dependence on Social Security. Each piece seems ordinary combined. They create a weak financial structure. If you want a different result, you need to be willing to look abnormal in some ways. Drive a less expensive car than you can technically finance. Live in a home that leaves room for investing. Save more than the average. Avoid debt that others normalize. Invest when others only consume. Delay purchases that others use to signal success. Talk openly with yourself about retirement while others avoid the topic. This may make you look less impressive today, but it can make you far stronger later. That is one of the great paradoxes of wealth. The people who look rich early often remain fragile. The people who look ordinary while building assets often become free. Now let us go back to the opening question. Are you doing better or worse than everyone else? That is useful only to a point. A better question is this. Are you building a financial life that can survive reality? Can it survive a job loss? Can it survive a medical bill? Can it survive a recession? Can it survive a car repair? Can it survive retirement lasting 25 years? Can it survive inflation? Can it survive a spouse leaving the workforce? Can it survive the absence of a large Social Security check? Can it survive without credit cards? Average may not survive those things well. So do not build for average. Build for resilience. That means having cash buffers, low high-interest debt, controlled fixed costs, growing investments, a rising net worth, and a savings rate that creates real progress. It means understanding that income is not wealth. Spending is not lifestyle if it prevents freedom. Credit score is not net worth. Retirement balance is not enough until it can produce income. Social Security is support, not a complete plan. And appearances are not data. Data is data. The data says the average person is exposed. But the data also says the path to beat average is not mysterious. Spend less than you earn. Avoid high-interest debt. Save more than average. Invest the difference. Control housing and transportation. Let time compound. Review progress. Repeat. That sounds simple because the principles are simple. The difficulty is behavior. The system constantly tempts people away from the principles. It offers credit. It markets status. It normalizes payments. It makes lifestyle upgrades feel deserved. It turns emergencies into debt. It makes investing feel complicated. It makes retirement feel far away until it is too close. You have to build rules that protect you from those forces, a rule about credit cards, a rule about car payments, a rule about saving first, a rule about investing automatically, a rule about emergency funds, a rule about lifestyle inflation, a rule about measuring net worth. Rules matter because willpower is unreliable. When decisions are automatic, the system works even when motivation is low. This is how financial independence is built. Not through dramatic intelligence, through repeated correct behavior. One more important point. Do not let comparison become discouragement. If you are behind, the numbers may hurt, but pain can be useful if it wakes you up. The fact that you may be behind today does not mean you must stay behind. The average person often does not even look. If you are willing to look, you are already doing something different. Financial improvement begins with awareness, then order, then action, then repetition. If your retirement balance is low, increase contributions. If credit card debt is high, attack it. If spending is too high, inspect the biggest categories. If savings are too low, automate them. If you are earning too little, invest in skills. Negotiate, change jobs, or build side income where appropriate. If you are older and behind, do not waste time feeling regret. Use the time left more intentionally. Regret consumes energy that should be used for action. The average statistics are not your sentence, they are your map. They show you where people end up if they follow the default path. Once you see the default path clearly, you can choose a different one. That is the power of data. It strips away illusion. It shows that the person with the vacation photos may still be carrying debt. It shows that the person with a decent salary may have little net worth. It shows that the average retiree may not be ready. It shows that a good credit score can coexist with fragile finances. It shows that normal spending can consume the future. And it shows that a slightly better set of habits applied consistently can create a very different outcome. If you save more than the average by even a modest amount, avoid destructive debt, and invest over decades, the gap can become enormous. That is compounding. Compounding does not only apply to investments, it applies to habits. A small gap in behavior repeated for years becomes a large gap in outcomes. The person who saves 15% instead of 6% does not feel dramatically different in the first month. After 10 years, the difference is significant. After 30 years, it can define retirement. The person who avoids a $9,000 credit card balance does not look richer immediately, but they avoid thousands in interest and emotional stress. That saved money can become investments. The person who controls transportation costs may not impress people in the parking lot, but they may own more assets, sleep better, and retire earlier. This is how ordinary people build extraordinary financial stability. Not by beating everyone in income, by beating average behavior. That is the core lesson. Most people want to know where they stand because they want reassurance. They want to hear they are doing fine. But reassurance is not always helpful. Truth is more useful. If the truth says you are behind, that is painful but actionable. If the truth says you are ahead, that is encouraging but not a reason to relax. If the truth says average is fragile, then being average should not be your target. Your target should be a system strong enough to give you choices. The ultimate measure of wealth is choice. Can you choose to retire? Can you choose better work? Can you choose to help family without wrecking yourself? Can you choose to handle emergencies without panic? Can you choose to walk away from bad debt? Can you choose time over consumption? Can you choose peace over appearances? Those choices do not come from looking normal. They come from building a balance sheet that is better than normal. So use the statistics as a starting point. If the median income is around $52,000, ask how you can increase your earning power. If the median retirement savings is around $65,000, ask how much you truly need and how your contributions must change. If 1 in 4 people have no retirement account, make sure you are not one of them. If the average Social Security check is around $1,550, ask whether that would really support your life. If the average household spends around $5,577 per month, examine whether your spending is intentional or automatic. If housing and transportation dominate the budget, get those decisions right. If the average credit score is 715, maintain good credit but do not mistake it for wealth. If the average credit card debt is over $9,000, make zero revolving credit card debt a principal. If median net worth is around $122,000, track your own and make it rise. If the savings rate is around 6%, beat it decisively. If the average retirement age is 61, plan for the possibility that work ends before you expect. If life expectancy after 65 is another 2 decades or more, build assets that can last. That is how the data becomes useful, not as trivia, as instruction. The average person's money situation is shocking because it reveals a gap between the life people want and the structure they are building. People want peace, but build pressure. People want retirement, but undersave. People want wealth, but overconsume. People want freedom, but sign up for payments. People want confidence, but avoid looking at the numbers. You can do better, not by being perfect. By being conscious, a conscious person sees the system. A conscious person sees the averages and decides whether they are acceptable. A conscious person understands that every dollar has a job. A conscious person knows that debt, spending, saving, and investing are all connected. Most people do not fail because the rules are impossible. They fail because the rules are ignored, so do not ignore them. Build the emergency fund, pay off the high-interest debt, raise the savings rate, invest consistently. Keep fixed costs controlled, measure progress, avoid lifestyle inflation. Use the average only as a benchmark to beat, not an identity to accept. And remember that your financial future is not determined by what most people are doing. It is determined by what you repeatedly do. If most people are drifting toward a fragile retirement, you do not have to drift with them. If most people are carrying expensive debt, you do not have to carry it. If most people are saving too little, you can save more. If most people are comparing appearances, you can study reality. That is the advantage. Reality is available to anyone willing to look at it. And once you look at it, the path becomes clear. Do not aim to be average. Aim to be free.